welcome to the Amid Lab in San Francisco.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, you're in the city, right? So
Yeah,
not too far.
Not too far.
Awesome, man. Well, been excited to chat. I know Mike from Paxton connected us.
Yeah, a good friend of mine.
You guys worked together at a previous AI company, so I'm interested to hear more about that and more about your business. But maybe we can just dive right in. Tell us what you're building. What's your your full name, and then we'll talk a little bit about background.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Eshan Chordia, and I'm the co-founder of Lumino AI. So we're building an integrated, it's a hardware and software integrated compute protocol to train and fine-tune AI models. So how it works is when you work with AWS or GCP, you're working with one centralized cloud provider, right? You are connecting to their machines and they control everything. What we're trying to build is a platform that allows anyone with compute resources to join the network and offer their compute to train and fine-tune AI models. And on the customer side, how it works is we're building like a developer experience similar to like OpenAI, right? With OpenAI, you have GPT 3.5 or 4, and then you can fine-tune your fine-tune GPT-4 with your data set. Similarly, instead of just being GPT-4, you can bring any model you want. So it supports large language models, any sort of deep learning or GPU-based machine learning. And we allow you to bring any model, whether it's a custom model or like an open source pre-trained LLM like Llama 2, Mistral, etc. And then you can use our SDK to start getting training instantly. So the model, you can start training your model. You give us the link to your training set, other metadata information that you're looking that's important, and you can get started training your model. And so that's kind of what we're building here.
Got it. So in the context of OpenAI, the example, I as a developer am just consuming their API, but I'm the actual hardware is obscure from me, right? And so if I'm working with your platform, am I aware of some of the context of that hardware, or is it still obscured, but it is now coming from maybe a dramatically more diverse set of GPUs or infrastructure?
Yeah, great question. So our goal is to abstract away compute, right? So just like OpenAI, when you use their APIs, you kind of don't know what's happening behind the scenes of the compute part. Your job is to fine-tune the model on your data set. Same exact thing. We're trying to abstract away compute. You kind of give us if it's an LLM, like the size of the model, the token size, etc., and we figure out based on the compute that's available at that moment what's going to be good for you. Or if you want more advanced settings, you can say, hey, I am looking for this type of compute because there are some models that are so big. Or some models that are built in some way that you want to be able to kind of choose the compute that you're looking for, right? But you have to bring your own model. So that's a little bit of a difference. It's like you're not just deploying some model that we've created. You bring your own model. Yeah. But yeah, we're trying to abstract away that compute.
Got it. And so is the buyer, the decision maker at a company that becomes your customer, is this someone who's on the DevOps side who's like really trying to optimize for costs, or is it like a strategic decision that they're saying, I don't want to be on AWS for this because of X, Y, and Z reasons? Like what is the value proposition to the customer, and like who is making that decision right now?
Yeah, it makes sense. So generally it can be anyone from like a developer who's on the modeling team, right, or a DevOps person. It really depends, because if you work with small startups, you generally don't see like one DevOps person at a small startup. You see generalist engineers. At bigger companies, you generally see like a DevOps kind of team or a DevOps person in charge of this kind of stuff. So generally we see engineering teams or like, someone who owns the budget of an engineering team, like an EM or a director, kind of make these decisions. The bigger you go, right? And in terms of like what the value prop is, there are a couple of value props. So one is that we're much cheaper than AWS and GCP, anywhere between 50 to 80%, depending on the GPU that you're looking for and what type of training you're trying to do. And then the other experience is like, we're trying to, we're trying to build a great developer experience, like something that Twilio has built and other companies who you think about, like, oh my God, Stripe, right? That's a great example of like the tools are so easy to use. And so we want to be able to get customers up and running really quickly on being able to deploy and train models. And so with AWS and GCP, you either need a DevOps team for you to like set up your instances, spin up those instances, set them up, make sure they're configured correctly. When you're done, spin them back down, right? So your costs are not through the roof. So we kind of avoid that by doing abstracting away compute. You pay for the compute that you use instead of it being on all the time, right? And then the second thing that we find a lot is in this world with the introduction of OpenAI and Together AI and some of the other companies, people are moving away from like wanting to spin up AWS and GCP machines unless you're really big, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you're so big that like your compute costs are so expensive that you need to hyper optimize when you spin up a machine, when you spin down a machine, keep costs low, right? But people want to get started really fast on training their models and deploying them in production. And so like that's the second part of just building a really good developer experience around that.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, I mean, if I'm, Microsoft with Azure or AWS, GCP, like I'm optimizing for like massive scale, mm-hmm. right? It sounds like you are both for your customers, they're both looking for something that's very efficient. It's not going to lock them into a particular model, but there's also a cost sensitivity that you're serving for them. But like big picture, are you basically building like an alternative cloud that you are also gearing to get those people in the door using you and then eventually serving them when they are at that massive scale as well?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that AWS and GCP are great at is like they've built all this infrastructure, hardware infrastructure, right? And then they've built a great amount of like software services on top of that. But they serve like thousands of use cases, right? You want to deploy your website, you can do that. You need to build an app, you want to do serverless, right? And what that causes is that like, if you want to focus on this great developer experience for AI, that's not there yet, right? And my co-founder worked at Amazon, at AWS actually specifically. I know other people work at AWS, other big cloud. They have a product roadmap, right? They know they kind of can, unless something changes like AI, mm-hmm. They can't iterate that fast. So for us, we're actually trying to build what we call like a global cloud for AI. Mm-hmm. So right now we're focused on training and fine tuning, but that's not the only product we're going to build, right? We want to build a product for inference, right? So like training, the environment is for developers, right?
Yeah.
Inference, so like for training, like you care deeply about like performance and other developer stuff. You care all of that for inference as well, but who actually sees inference? It's the customer when they use an application, right? So like if I'm a company and I build GPT into my application and my customer is using it for inference, they see the results. Mm-hmm. That needs to be super fast, right? Yep. You need to be able to build something that can handle high queries per second, the model responds quickly, and then the entire production environment is very low latency. Mm-hmm. So the type of environment that we're building for like this decentralized compute protocol for training is probably not suitable for the same thing for inference. So we would build a separate protocol to specifically focus on inference, but piggyback on the hardware that we've gathered in the decentralized marketplace, and then also a lot of the software that we've already built, right? But there's so many future products that we can build in this like global cloud for AI space, right? Right now, the internet is not set up for like AI agents to interact with other AI agents or AI agents to interact with other APIs, right? Because right now when humans interact with it, even programmatically, we do something like hundreds of thousands of requests per second, mm-hmm. or maybe millions of requests per second. But if AI agents are the ones who are going to be interacting at the server level, you could see something like hundreds of millions of requests per second or billions of requests per second. So the actual infrastructure of the internet needs to be changed over time to kind of handle that kind of bandwidth and the amount of AI agents going to be talking to each other. Yep. So like we have this vision of like, okay, we want to build products where we can make AI infrastructure like rapidly better, but in the realm of like how do we make AI like cheaper, safer, and more accessible, right? And part of that vision for us is like having a blockchain component to those products. So our decentralized compute protocol has a blockchain component, our inference protocol will have a blockchain component, and even an AI agent system could have a blockchain component. And one part where I think blockchain could be really good for AI is, imagine this world where like AI agents are like making a lot of requests to APIs, or they're talking to each other, but that humans are also. You kind of want to be able to tell if a human or if an AI agent is the one that is like, interacting with the system, right? And you want to be able to know, like, if some sort of inference is happening, what that AI was predicting, and then record that and be able to go back and say, like, hey, this was an AI-generated request, an AI-generated output, or this was a human-generated request, a human-generated output. Because in the future, it's going to be really hard to tell if something is AI or something is human, and you want to preserve that humanity, right? Like, we want AIs to be like tools for us, and not to be, and not to like kind of be humans, right?
Yeah. In the convo I had with Mike from Paxton, we were talking about, we're going about life, and our AI lawyer agents are actually like suing and countersuing each other because of the crack in the sidewalk that you kind of trip over, and like it's just happening, and it's like always on. And so I think that's kind of what you're describing, is that human lawyers they wouldn't be available at at a snap to make that transaction, but when it's the AI lawyer agents, that the volume could actually increase dramatically for these types of call it a transaction that's happening between these two counterparties. It's interesting. So decentralization, right? It sounds like there's both. The hardware itself is decentralized, in that it's not it's not owned by a singular entity that is building up the infrastructure. Like you're sourcing that from maybe there's people who are mining for Bitcoin or something. There's like extra capacity out there that's spread out. So you're bringing that capacity to the table and allowing people to rent out their extra capacity. But then there's also a blockchain aspect to this. So I'd love to learn more about both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of things. So I think, I'm not sure what this timestamp was, I think last year, but like most people don't know this, is that AWS only owns about 40% of their data centers per square foot. The rest of the 60% comes from other data centers where they like rent space in, right? Similar to like renting space in a building.
I have a friend who's at Equinix.
Yes, that's one of them, right? Yeah, exactly.
They always said we're the guts of the internet.
Exactly, and it's true. And what's interesting is there are 7.2 million data centers in the world, right? And the amount of data centers that in the world are actually decreasing, even though there is more data being passed through these data centers ever been before. And it's because these companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Google and AWS have slowly, or like big public clouds have slowly taken away these data centers companies. Yeah. And so so there's like a few problems that we're trying to solve at the same time. One is that GPUs are super expensive, right? And that's like almost at a hardware level. And also that they're not really available, for different customers. Like we've spoken to a lot of customers, hundreds of CTOs, startup founders, AI engineers at different size companies, and they kind of tell the same story. Like I'm not able to get the GPUs that I'm looking for, and the big companies don't even offer consumer grade GPUs, right? You can train AI models on different types of GPUs. There's a lot of research from academia proven this. There's a lot of research in production environments that have proven this, but people can't get access to them. So with these 7.2 million data centers and their business being taken away slowly, we kind of don't want this. We don't want a world where we rely on just 4 or 5 or 8, if you include Alibaba Cloud and other big clouds in the rest of the world, 8 or 10 big cloud companies to control the entire internet. Yeah. And an example, a really extreme example of this is that I don't know what the current number is, but at one point, 70% of all Ethereum nodes were run on AWS. So yes, Ethereum was decentralized. Again, could be old data, so I'm not sure. But at that point, if Amazon was like, hey, I don't want to support Ethereum anymore, you would have seen 70% of all Ethereum nodes die, right? So so part of this is like getting more hardware available for people to build AI models, because it's very clear that AI is a transformative technology and will be a transformative technology for decades to come. Now, whether this current boom in Gen AI is a fad or not, and whether it'll be useful in enterprises is yet to be determined. I personally believe we will see growth by the end of the decade and massive use of AI, right? But that's one problem that we want to solve, right? The second problem is we want to build a more open and accessible internet that is not dominated or controlled by big cloud, right? And so what that means is that you have to generate more revenue for the data centers themselves, right, to be able to stay in business.
Yeah.
And so these are like the few things that we think about when we're building these products. So on the compute provider side, that's why we allow anyone who has certain requirements of compute, bandwidth, memory, and storage to join the network. You can do it from any data center, right? And then you can start earning money when customers use your compute.
Yep.
And then we have like a crypto and blockchain component to that. Where you can do in a decentralized network, you need to be able to trust the other side. Now, when you have Google and Amazon, you have legal paperwork and you know who the person is. You can sue them in the U.S., right? When on a decentralized system, it is possible that you don't know who's on the other side, right? So the system then, therefore, has to enforce trust, right? Otherwise, you're not able to trust the other side.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of technical and cryptoeconomic incentives to ensure the compute provider is not committing fraud, isn't stealing your data, isn't giving you garbage output and stuff like that. So that's on the compute side. Then on the blockchain side, we use the blockchain for something very specific. We call it proof of training and proof of verification, right? And so the proof of training is to okay, yes, this compute provider is actually doing the training that you're looking for, right? The training that you want to do. And it ensures that they are not trying to game the system. And then we have proof of verification, where there's a verification system in the protocol that verifies the compute provider did what they said they did, right? The training has actually been done correctly. And then we can, once that has been verified, we can give that back to the customers. And that's one of the many ways we ensure that the customer is actually getting what they expect to get.
Interesting. It sounds like a lot to build. This is like a grand vision that you have here. Yeah. So I'd love to maybe even zoom back in time as you answer this question, but talk a little bit about your story, your path, your co-founder. We heard AWS, but yeah, you're taking on a big challenge here that seems really important and a counterbalance to behemoth tech companies, right? So would love to learn a little just more about your backstory.
Yeah. So let's see. So I'll start with Yogesh. Yogesh is my co-founder. We met last year. We were building another product called QuickerPay, which was a crypto on-ramp for Web3 gaming studios. Did that for a little bit. For a bunch of reasons, we decided not to pursue that. So we were like, we want to work together. What are some ideas that we're both passionate about, right? What are some ideas that you see that there's a market for? And then in general, where are the skills that we can apply? And so we went through a bunch of different ideas. We iterated on different products, did a lot of user interviews for this idea and other ideas, and we settled on this. Did lots of interviews. There are AI events here every single day, right? Went to a lot of them and really did a lot of deep dive into what the problem is and why is it actually happening, right? And how do we solve it? So it wasn't let's use, this is a problem that exists and let's go find a solution for this. It was let's start from what is the actual problem? Yeah. Why is this problem happening and how can we solve it? How are people solving it today? Is that the best business model, right? If we were to get more compute, how would we do that? And then that's how we came across blockchain and crypto and using those cryptoeconomic incentives might be the best way to kind of build this product, right? We wanted to be more of a marketplace where anyone can come in, give their compute, instead of being a company that, a data center company buys land, right? You build the data center and you install hardware into those data centers. There are companies kind of doing that, and that takes a lot of capital. So we were thinking about more of like a different way of like what happens when we're able to manufacture more GPUs. Right, and there's more GPUs than the supply constraint than there is today. What happens if we aren't able to manufacture more GPUs? Right, there are certain scenarios that play out in the world that kind of limit. That means that we're limited to how many GPUs we have, and we won't be able to manufacture more until 2027. Right, or we're not able to grow the manufacturing capacity until 2027. So this is kind of what the things that we looked at. Before we started Lumino, and before we worked on Quicker Pay, I was actually at Protocol Labs. I'm not sure if you're familiar. They've built one of the biggest layer 1 blockchains similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum, but they have built something called Filecoin, which is like a decentralized storage market. So similar to kind of what we're doing, but in the storage area. And I was on the Filecoin cryptoeconomics team there. So we were having conversations about decentralized compute. How do we use blockchain and cryptoeconomics to incentivize, these data centers that have storage, or others, we call them storage providers in the Filecoin community. How do we convince storage providers to join the network? How do we ensure that, they're doing real deals with people and not storing fake data? How do we ensure that, how do we build this set of developer tools and user-facing tools so people want to store stuff on Filecoin? How do we make it cheaper or price compatible against GCP and AWS's cold storage products, right? Which I think they're much cheaper now, or have been for a long time. So that was a little bit there. I was there just under a year. And then we started Quicker Pay and then Lumino. Before that, I actually was working with Mike. So Mike was on the founding team of Zesty AI. I joined Zesty AI in April 2019, and I was there till April 2022. Okay. So I was on the product team at Zesty, and we built Zfire, which was a wildfire risk product that was extremely successful. We built Z Property, which was a property insights product where we took satellite imagery and low-flying aircraft imagery and ran deep learning computer vision models against those. And we built these AI-based property prop tech products specifically for insurance. So we were a AI insurtech company.
Got it. Awesome. So it seems like you are the right guy to be working on this from those two. You're not like here chasing the trend, but you spent the last significant portion of your career working with these two sets of technologies, and my question about these cryptographic kind of incentives or cryptoeconomic incentives with is there some kind of token that you're issuing that if I'm contributing my GPUs, I'm a smaller data center provider, am I becoming an owner of this entire protocol by contributing to its existence? Is that kind of how this plays out?
Yeah, so on the first part, hindsight is 2020, right? In 2019, when I shut down my previous startup, I wasn't like, I'm gonna go work in AI and then I'm gonna go work in Web3 and I'm gonna start this company. I was like, I started a company, did this for a year and a half. We couldn't grow as much as we wanted, so I was like, let me go out, see what else is in the world, and then eventually I'll start a company again. And so, spoke to a bunch of companies in 2019, ended up deciding I was like, if I'm going to start a company again, I should go work at a small startup, right? Before my previous company, I'd worked at 50-person, 200-person, 500-person companies. And so I was like, let's go work at a small startup. Zesty was, I think, 13 people when I joined. So that was cool. And then in 2022, I wasn't actually really looking to leave Zesty. That was, I cannot say enough great things about the team there. Mike, the founders, Atul and Kumar, phenomenal team. I had a great time. I was not looking to leave. And then it just happened, I think the crypto boom was happening. So I had a bunch of Web3 companies reach out to be like a product lead at different companies. And I'd been into crypto and Web3 since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like super interested in the space. I'd read the white papers, I'd participated in some hackathons. And so it just happened that I ended up joining Protocol Labs. I wasn't looking to leave Zesty. And so, but yeah, so that's kind of like how I ended up here. And then on this cryptoeconomic incentives and token, we do plan on launching a token at some point. The point of the token will be like, let's incentivize these compute providers to act in the right way. Let's give them ownership in the network in the sense that like they get rewards for participating, for doing the right thing, for adding what we call it adding value to the network, right? So adding value to the network means taking on AI training jobs, right? So like we don't want someone to just join the network and then not do anything, but earn tokens or get tokens for doing that, right? You have to provide value to the network because at the end of the day, the customers need those compute resources to train their models, right? And so if you aren't doing that, then you're not generating value to the network. Now there's some other ways to generate value to the network that are not as important as giving computer resources. That could be doing the verification that I was talking about, right? Verifying training jobs, or because we have like tokens and a blockchain, every block needs to be validated and then written on chain, right? So actually validating blocks adds value to the network. But we are building a system where we want people to do those things, but we want mainly for them to provide resources, compute resources, for customers to be able to train their models. And
not just compute to verify that the compute is
exactly
like a loop.
Exactly. So that is the main focus of what we're building.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this, what we're talking about here, I think you already mentioned that there's various takes on how important this is. I think we probably both sit here and agree this is like a really important thing for the future. It's going to impact a lot of society and work and business. But what we're really fundamentally talking about here on the like the upper end of that spectrum of like what this could be is basically artificial intelligence and like compute basically taking over a lot of the activities that happen in various sectors of human society and business. And so thinking like, do we want that all concentrated in a few mega corporations that are private enterprises that we see it with certain potentially monopolistic entities in e-commerce and search and so forth, where like they put themselves in a really powerful position and they can extract and the downstream impact is maybe consumer prices are going up, or the cost of getting your message to customers goes up and up and up. But we're talking right now about potentially like something that touches all knowledge work, right? Just as an example. And so figuring out a way to have alternatives that are more collectively owned and governed as alternatives makes a lot of sense and feels very important.
Yeah, 100%. And part of it is also like enabling people to use open source or their own custom models to build AI, because like you said, it's not good for society, and it's not good for us as consumers if 5 or 6 companies own all the AI models, right? So like there needs to be infrastructure that supports building of open source AI models and of building your own, even if it's not open source, but like imagine you're like even Zesty, right? They have their own proprietary AI models. We have lots of AI models at Zesty, right? But being able to build those things and not being dependent on Google or AWS if needed, right? I don't want to say it will happen, right? We've seen companies that have extreme monopolies do really bad things in the history, like in our past, right? And in the history of human existence. And I can't say for sure it will happen, but we don't want to be in a scenario where it would happen, or where like these big companies start telling people, hey, you can't build that because that competes with the product that we're building, or you can build that, but it's going to be super expensive and you're not going to be able to afford it. You're going to have to raise so much money that you're never going to be able to extract value, right? This might be old information, and I don't know how much the price cuts have been since this came out, but like there was a VC who did an analysis on using like the cost of using OpenAI's ChatGPT or GPT API
Yeah.
versus using like an open source model like Llama 2. And the cost of inference was multiple orders of magnitude cheaper for using Llama
Yeah.
2 than GPT, right?
Yeah.
So that's the power of open source models, right? And we want open source models to be built on infrastructure, any infrastructure that that the customer wants, regardless of whether it's us or Google. But you should have choice,
Yeah.
right? And that's important to be able to have choice.
Especially because the infrastructure companies have significant interests in the model
Exactly.
companies, right? So
Exactly.
it's not a fair and open landscape from that perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, really stimulating conversation.
Yeah.
You guys are relatively early. I know you may have some announcements that will have come out before this podcast is released, but look forward to following the journey. And then obviously we've got this lab of companies, other founders who are developing their own models, and so I'm sure they'd love to learn more about how you can help them do it for lower costs and more effectively with the developer ecosystem that you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always happy to chat with new customers, and we'll be. I think by the time this podcast is launched, we would have announced, but there's going to be some good news coming, and so super excited for that.
Awesome, man. Well, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.